SEL Rocket League is already concluded this week, but we still have more action for you from the SEL. It's Valorant, baby. My name's Infernos, is joined here by Mick, aka Dallas, and it is finally nearing the end of our playoff section here. We are in round 2 of our playoffs. Just a couple more games left to go, but there's still full action. BO3's ahead of us, and this one, number 1 seed facing off against our number 9 seed, but don't sleep on either of these two teams. It's Niner Esports facing off against George Mason University.
No, George Mason, obviously, being a big hitter here over the course of the season, definitely going ahead to establish themselves at the top seed, and even then not just stirring that entire Sage of Swiss, but also coming out with an absolute bang there during the just entry section that we had, just to go ahead and actually qualify for this league in the first place. But anything past that point, George Mason has been an absolute unit from top to bottom, proving themselves over and over and over again. But Niner Esports, my biggest thing about this week was Niner Esports is always one of those teams where it feels like even though during our first season they were a very high contender, really just ran the bracket anywhere you could really put them. Ever since then, they haven't really been that same exact just definitive force that we've seen on a consistent week to week basis. But every single time you put these guys into a scenario where it says, look, it's a do or die kind of thing, they have always either A, made sure it's gone very far, or B, been that exact team you want to upset to really keep things going and keep it interesting.
Yeah, to be a team that is so consistently yourself, but also to be the team that's everyone has to keep an eye on is something that's
Right.
very impressive, especially for SEL that we have in the past season have essentially just surged back in for competition. We already had really good teams. We had these 4 or 5 teams last semester that we felt like could do a lot in CVAL. We saw them do a lot
Yeah.
in CVAL in terms of ranking, and now we have even more, and it's becoming true in pretty much every title that we now offer for the SEL, and hopefully even for future titles as we jump into more options and see as we expand the SEL. In case you missed that broadcast just a couple days ago and all the fun announcements you had, one of which is not actually been announced on our Twitter. Make sure to check out the Twitter. You'll have to check the VOD for that one, but it is a huge piece of news. Me and Dallas promise you it's a huge piece of news. You're not going to want to miss it. But speaking, you're not going to want to miss anything, the action that's unfurling in front of us as we see what maps we are heading into. And I think it's almost exactly the same thing we had last week, Dallas. It's Sunset, Haven, and Split. So pretty close, but that last one, it's at least different. I almost hope it doesn't go to it just because I just don't like the map of Split that much, to be frank.
We're probably on the same exact page, at least for me. Playing the map of Split is abysmal, but at least watching it, it feels like whenever we actually get it into the map pool, it seems to be such a wild card at this point in time where no teams actually really want to go there. It usually feels like the verse kind of ban out of the way because it's there. Teams going to have that just unspoken GA to say, let's just go ahead and not play this because we all hate it. But it actually being here and being the decider, better yet, I think is going to be really interesting just because it gets to that point to where obviously Niners going ahead and banning out the Pearl of all things. It's just going to be interesting in its own right because even in just the map rotation in general, I'm liking to see that Split's going to be introduced. I like to see if there's been any kind of adjustments on the agent composition because even in the pro scene, it's just like everybody likes these very just linear maps, these very just tried and true kind of situations. Abyss kind of being thrown in there while it doesn't have nearly as much verticality. It just feels very much more open in terms of your lines of sight. So Split always has that weird kind of aspect of verticality being thrown into the mix that just seems not going to say they're not used to it, but it's just not really something. It's not an ideal scenario at the end of the day. So looking to see what we're dealing with. Obviously, Sunset, Haven, tried and true. Sunset, kind of our new ascent. The teams aren't really feeling the scent too much. And then Haven, you got to throw a 3 map in there somewhere just because teams love slowing the game down. They love creating that sense of tempo. They love to have options in front of them. And it depends on whether or not you want that kind of I don't know, variable of whether or not you want your walls to have definitive lines of sight and actual corners you can hold, or you go over to the likes of, all over the place Lotus, where everything's made of paper mache.
We're gonna have to see if the agent selection has really changed also for Split. Last time we had Split gone for a long period of time, maybe we had a slight map rework, a lot of like what we saw in Sunset, where they just changed a couple of angles, a couple of alleys, a couple of turns and bins, and agent selection over that long period of time greatly changed. Sage was a must pick for the map way back when. Now no longer really is a viable option for the map. There's just much better sentinels, much better agents that can fulfill essentially the same role you hand on over to Sage, and more specifically that ice wall that you're wanting to utilize. But Split does have, like you said, with those new variations, with the new agents we have in the pool, maybe something can be cooked up. And Sunset, I feel like is still in this new tertiary growing pain period, Dallas, where you have enough changes over on that B site, which was
Yeah.
the end all be all objective on attack. Now, with how different it feels defensively and offensively in post plant scenarios, I expect agent selections to start to diversify at least a little bit. Give me something different. Cypher's still going to be permanent. Cypher is just the GOAT, undisputed LeBron 2018 style strats. Like, it is just going to be what you see in nearly every single map. But some of your agents, otherwise, I feel like could still be extremely viable. Like maybe, just maybe, a Neon to sprint into side and be able to wreak havoc in the back line of a defense could be a great way to go about it. And George Mason wants Soji to go ahead and test it out.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, I like the fact that both these teams are going ahead and flexing this exact pick. The only variation we're getting here inside of this matchup is going to be the battle between the two initiators because the breach is going to be ever prevalent inside of this map. I mean, just no matter what. But the Fade versus the Sova kind of lineup, it really comes down to comfortability. Both of them are extremely viable. The ultimate of one feels a little bit better than the other, being that Fade with the retake capabilities of it. But with the Sova, I mean, having the recon darts, the regens, even then better yet, just having, I mean, knowing that the haunt is good, don't get me wrong, it just feels like it's a little too reactable. It feels like it's more easily accessible target. And even then, looking compared to the recon drone, and look at the owl drone and what that does. I mean, it's a little bit slower than a prowler, sure, but it gives you so much more information. It really just kind of hovers things so you can actually maneuver around any kind of cypher tripwires that are there, so you can actually go around them while still getting the information. Know if there is somewhat of a curveball with their place, it allows you to maneuver around that. There's a lot more just diverse actions that can come out from a Sova, I feel, and a lot more freedom of expression, quite frankly, because so that you talk about your lineups, you talk about, you know, just all these kind of crazy and wacky things you can do, but then you got obviously Fade, and it's we're playing Mario Kart inside of our games now.
Here's the Neon though, Ruda wanting to test the waters maybe early for the Niner Esports defense. Make a quick prowl up through A main, a little bit of assistance behind you. Maybe your breach can set up any sort of utility. A flash could be ready early. They decided to go for it, but they don't go for it instead. They'll be forced to fall back as utility from George Mason University gets sent the other way, and both teams trade out the duelists. Just not really too concerned with that. Matter of fact, front-facing fight, I should say. But that does put George Mason now in a spot where they don't have the player that's going to guarantee be the first out the rip every single round. They're going to have to start to figure out, well, now how do we move on the attack? We have to get a first blood that's going to be more impactful. We have to find a kill that gives us the lead. We have to start to take guesses as to where Niner Esports are heavily stacking their players. And unfortunately, I don't know if this gamble is going to pay out here, Dallas, because it's looking heavy off to the A side.
Yeah, I mean, even then, that was just more so off the adjustment in the initial combat that we found over towards the A side. I mean, nothing's really flexed itself out. You saw a little bit of an engage towards the middle of the map and a check by the defense, knowing that, okay, if that box isn't checked out, we got a Cypher over towards the B site, so that doesn't need to be rotated. I mean, everybody else just kind of make this shit over towards the A site. We're already a player, at least kind of up. We've already gotten an extra little bit of damage off of these guys, and so long as you can just live, play that ring around the rosy, give your teammates enough space to really start working things out, it should be a nice, easy cleanup for us in right here. So 1v3 situation with Blaze ahead of it, able to go ahead, live with the 75 HP that was left there from the remnants of that first fight at the beginning of the round, but you can't get anything past that.
Seas goes for the jump shot with the classic. Free gun, by the way, and it gets the job done for Niner Esports to conclude in favor for the defense, which, on all honesty, greatly assisted by the fact that GMU Patriots tested the waters early on A and then still decided to stick back to that site. Niner Esports say, we can retake B. It's a whole lot easier for us to do so. We'd rather hold on to the A. We'd rather make it so it's impossible for you to engage into site. There's no gecko for you. Of course, we don't have one either, which means if you want to go for a plant on objective, you're going to have to play very direct, and you're going to have to put a lot more focus towards short in comparison to, say, if you had that gecko and you could send 4-to-1 split through hall and short. Now you got to go fairly even, if not just majority-wise focus your duelist down short and take those disadvantageous gunfights from the middle top angle of defense that Niner Esports are now really heavily utilizing, even as we're seeing round 2 go underway. They're locking down that upper central courtyard, that heaven side of courtyard, just to make sure that George Mason do not have the freedom to peek down that lane, and they're forced to use their utility, forced to use their dark covers, and maybe even use all of them, as you can see them waving it out and even putting Blaze up to a spot to go ahead and clear that market door, even if they do not opt to go for it.
An interesting player to go ahead and kind of throw into the fray up there through the middle of the map. I mean, considering that you do want to go ahead, flex that area, see kind of what's going on with it, see what you can manage, and even then just kind of get the participation, you know, check attendance over there and see whether or not they actually want to allocate over that area of the map. but it's still a lot to really ask for. With everything that's going on thus far, you see a trade coming through somewhere else on the map over towards that B site, clearing things up over there, and you're probably going to see a bit of a pivot. But I think, honestly, you're looking at the Niners, and you're seeing that they're playing things fairly slow. They're just letting that site take over kind of occur. They know that they had the better weapons.
30 seconds
Worst
left.
comes to worst, then, okay, nobody's over here towards B, but let's not really go ahead and pull the trigger on that yet. Let's just play things slow. Let's wait for that spike to go down. There's only 20 seconds remaining. If they're not here on B, they have to be on A. So just pivot towards the middle, get this coverage of the map, make sure to put them in a scenario where they only had that Bulldog to work with that was towards the back, even if that was really the case. The only thing they lost was that gun over towards B side, so you know the most majority of these guys are only going to have a classic to work with, and that's not a stress whatsoever. It should be a pretty quick cleanup. Ruda looking for the kill with the Outlaw, can only find one, but, well, you got a lot else to work with. The Sheriff's not only on Niners side, but on GMU, and K-Train only has so little health to work with in the process. The stun and an aftershock comes out. It's a definitive death. It's a couple secondaries picked up out of those Sheriffs for the rest of the team to scavenge with in the next round to make things look fairly doable.
Still very impactful round for George Mason University. They obviously get that first frag they were hoping for in the refrag towards the B site. They moved all of Niner Esports away from A, as once again we see them putting all their eggs in the proverbial defensive basket the moment they see any opposition facing a direction and or site. And that's fine for this map. It's something that maybe won't work as we see our second and third maps come into play. But if they're going to continue to do that, GMU are just going to continue to do exactly what they have been in these first two rounds, where they're able to majority get into sight or at least find good confrontations early and just say, hey, we'll poke this way, make the bear run off in this direction and rage, and then we'll take the other side, or we'll lap back around and bait things out if we absolutely have to. Niner Esports, they don't have the weapons in round 3. GMU, having dropped 3 of those weapons in round 2, know they will have that theoretical gun advantage, and Niner Esports will have to play a whole lot closer in terms of their fights. So you can already see the neon of Ruda just saying, I want to go into the face of B main, whether it's early for information or trying to get an early frag. No matter the case, I want to punish GMU and claim space and vie for that map control.
I mean, looking for a couple Outlaws shot. I mean, no matter what, you find yourself maybe a kill, or just at least go ahead and get a good bit of damage off to kind of guarantee what could be a kill there for the retake. But, I mean, that's the big objective here out of Niners, is just going ahead, picking off whatever players they can, not really stressing the result of the round too much, already being up 2-0. They want to make sure just things are as expensive as possible, just knowing that they did buy a couple Sheriffs in that last round. So if they can manage to at least rip maybe 1 or 2 of these guns out in terms of the long term of the economy, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but as it stands right now, you're just looking to make sure to really drive home the guns that you got. With the Sheriffs, an Outlaw, and a Guardian, I mean, you don't have, sure, these kind of spam abilities that you do with other types of fully automatic weapons, but as it stands right now, it will be more than enough to get the job done in the hands of most of these players, especially if you find yourself maybe an early pick, force off those players to get a rotation into another site. If you win that gamble, or that player who's running that rogue classic here amongst this roster, they could go find themselves a bit of a pickup.
This way.
Ruda knows a lot of utilities being dumped their way, and a quick fallback will be employed for Niner Esports. That's a really early expenditure of utility for the GMU Patriots, but it does guarantee them that ult, or wins them that kind of macro economy battle that they're hoping for in terms of ult economy, especially considering that they didn't get the results or kills maybe they wanted in round 1 in comparison to how they managed in round 2. They just want to try to equalize things out, make it so that if they have to start winning in ult battles to play maybe for a second half defensive half, they say, hey, at least we got 2 or 3 good ult rounds out of the way, get those in our back pocket, and make it a very manageable return fire back in that second half. But it's Ruda still for that first blood. B main didn't work out, but top of heaven, the Outlaws got freedom of sight, it seems, and George Mason followed and paid the price.
Even then, already been able to let you know what's going on over here towards the side of Mark. I mean, already gone ahead down to 60 HP, so he has found the exchange at least for their own life in the process, saying, I have got mine, but what do you have besides that? Not much more, as you see the likes of the Niners cleaning up house, giving themselves so much breathing room, so many guns dropped. I talked about the result of this round.
30 seconds
They just
left.
wanted to look good, and it looks outstanding because they ain't done yet. 2 full health players with just a little bit of health left to go out of Max Vince, who's only sitting on 30. Whether or not you have a classic or a sheriff, you just gotta hit the 1 to get it done.
Now all those weapons for GMU are stacked up on that B site. There's only 2 players to recollect them, but when you come into this one with hardly a purchase to your team's name, and you're relying on nearly Sif and Sif alone on site, backside of tower, to handle all of the competition sent their way, that is a Niner Esports win and a major loss to GMU Patriots, who have to step into round 4 now, just saying, okay, we can theoretically go for a soft eco. We'll have about 1,500 credits. The loser's bonus, even if we lose this, will assist us to have the the rest of our margin needed come into round 5. But you even have players that say, we want to test the limits. The new eco round in round 2 has become Guardians and Outlaws for nearly every single map. And we're seeing Max Finn say, hey, I've got the most kills. I've got the most credits to this point. My kit, a lot cheaper in the long scheme of things for my team. The smokes aren't as costly of an endeavor, costly piece of utility. I want to get that Guardian and try to help out as my team closes that gap where we see Soji set up the fast lane and take control of site with a single.
I mean, yeah, sure, you got the weapon. Sure, you got yourself the kills in the process. Are you with the right player in line? The chain link that's going on here to even find the results that you want. Already, I mean, on the controller, you're hanging back a little bit. You can find that exchange. You think the player with the Guardian has already gone ahead, bang yourself on site just to get a quick hot swap in and go to the other side of the map. You're still in a 1v3 situation. Nothing will save you from that besides your own wit, your own aim, and the gun in your hands. Guess who's waiting for you on site? The Cypher, who never has to lead because his team is doing everything necessary to get the job done. As we see Niner Esports already go ahead, shoot themselves up into a 4-0 to go ahead and get this game kicking off.
Yeah, when you're so comfortable with your team, you're able to trust your roster at nearly every single turn. Pichu has the freedom to sit over on site, where a lot of teams maybe aren't as comfortable. Early stages of a semester, it feels like, Dallas, where maybe there's been roster changes. Maybe they're trying to solidify who the subs are and who the mainstay 5 are going to be for your team. Where you say, okay, well, you're a little bit slow to rotate here for this retake to site. You're a little bit too, transient, trying to re-grab that utility and try to say we need it for the objective, when it was never going to be a big problem in regards to just retaking with the full 4 that you need to retake the objective. Much smarter for Niner Esports to say, hey, Pichu, walk your way to A site. You don't have to run. The team can hold strong. We got the weapon advantage, and we know they're only rocking stingers really to their name. But this round, the action's going to have to go a lot more in favor of the team early, and that's just not the case. They get double swept up in through market. They tried to send all 4. That way, bar your spike carrier, because K-Train would have an easier job planting, not having a get-go by holding that in through B main. And look at how it's punished this TMU side. There's just no chance that Niner Esports would give them 5 kills, let alone that they'd really even give them 1 at this rate, as the flashes and utility have been pretty darn clean from K-Tran. And it's not going to matter. You get 1, but that's all you get. Consolation prize. Niner Esports dominate round 5.
Yeah, a near flawless round out of them. I mean, even then, maybe you just kind of going ahead, pushing up there, saying, I got money. So, I mean, why not? Even then, the rest of my team does, so they can go ahead and slip them to buy a worst-case scenario. But, I mean, considering what you're working with, and even then, better yet, just dying in the meantime, you don't really care too much. K-Train's already close enough to go ahead and get that Rolling Thunder underway, and you're not really there too far off from your own near old theft. So you're saying, if I die in the process, I don't care about my KD ratio. I want to get my ultimate online as soon as humanly possible, and that goes ahead and get you that much closer to the attack. But as it stands right now, I mean, honestly, GMU just are in a bad spot just overall. Can't really find any space in the map to really take to their own besides, well, the spawn that's already given to them at the beginning of the round, and better yet, before the round even starts. So looking for space, looking for something to happen. The B site, it's not working for them. Market isn't happening. We're not seeing main working. We are seeing A have a bit of a better chance here. Already going ahead and closing out into 1-for-1. It's the round where you don't have most of the guns to work with, but you do still at least have someone to pick up the playoff of. And we see the Thrifty on the side of Niner Esports. Maybe GMU could have their own turn here.
Oh my goodness, Flash is coming out gloriously for K-Tran and Coco. They work in tandem to try to punish the defense of Niner Esports on their transition in from defender spawn to retake site. That leaves only Blaze alone because they were incapable of escaping back towards the objective. That's going to be punishing for GMU. Pichu tapping the spike, teasing for a moment. Just Aiden maybe could be looking the wrong way. Gets shot, doesn't take enough damage, and Blaze somehow still strikes first for Pichu's life as Aiden will stick this defuse. Help! Almost was enough to camp your way through it, but this ain't Call of Duty, baby. It's GMU finding their 1-round win.
I didn't see the health, but I didn't think it was at 75. I thought it was a little bit more above that, close to the 85 kind of round. But I mean, yellow's yellow. I mean, I have to at least give you that much information. I know it's a struggle sometimes, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's so close at a point though when you're dealing damage, especially when you see those shots through the wall, especially with Bulldog rounds. I mean, who really knows the damage number for Bulldog round off the top of her head? I'm an analyst, and even then I could probably ask Hypoc, and he'd be like, we don't really talk about it. But, I mean, as it stands so far, GMU to go ahead and get themselves at least the first round of the board. Obviously, good looking for them. Able to go ahead and deserve the rights to what they found themselves in this season so far. But just being on the board is where it all begins. So, a great look for them. Getting into the game. Sure, it was by a clutch. Sure, you lost a lot of players in the process, but that was an eco round for them. So, not only a clutch, well, that's what showed up on the banner. The more important thing that wasn't highlighted was the thrifty that there was as a result of it.
I mean, they still had, what, 2 or 3 proper rifles, and they decided to use ultimates, K-Train's Rolling Thunder, to secure at least one more towards defender spawn. But in terms of grand scheme of credits, they definitely come out on a positive in their direction. The issue still comes. They only had one player holding one at the end. They had to use ultimates for it. They were already just relying on what felt like their loser's bonus to try to keep them alive in these fights and these gun engagements. And now that that's lacking, you're going to start to question, hey, if we see Niner Esports take this round, how many more chances will George Mason University be given to try to get back into what should be a bye nearly every round when you're up to that point? But they'll send out a relay boat into market, Rolling Thunder to counter it. This is a pretty heavy expenditure for Niner Esports, but it's paying out. Pichu crossfires Maxman. Soji stuck behind the market banister, but can't really get the frag they're hoping for. It's going in favor of Niner until just this very moment. Soji strikes through. Ruda has to refrag, and GMU, I'm sorry to break it to you, Coco may be pretty damn good, but Pichu's on a hot streak this round, and he just got out-cyphered by Niner Esports.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing really how this thing is going. I mean, Niners just are absolutely locked in and in good form. I mean, able to go ahead and find themselves at 3-strand right off the get-go. Able to capitalize and find themselves not just that 3rd, that 4th, but now 5th, and they've already guaranteed themselves an even half. Worst case scenario with that really expending too much of their utility in the process. I mean, we had the Rolling Thunder invested, but I mean, we haven't seen the Overcharge invested. We haven't seen the Narrow Theft. We haven't seen the Nightfall. I mean, they are just sitting very, very peachy in terms of how many players are popping off immediately as soon as the actual execution goes off. They never feel like they're forced to pop anything just that retake. They find themselves so much comfortability, so much breathing room just right from the initial point of contact that everything past that point doesn't feel free, but it feels pretty darn easy to acquiesce. So already looking, speaking of, you know, finding yourself something and looking to acquire anything, we've already seen GMU able to step things up, pop that ultimate that we were talking about. Not on the side of the Niners yet, but Soji able to go ahead and rip it out, find one, and clear out that B site because they know that there's only a singular player there. You can throw a player on the line, especially with an ultimate, find that one, but as it comes around for the retake, these ultimates, I will say, hasn't been invested yet here by Niner Esports. Already going ahead, having 2 clocked out in a 3v3 kind of scenario with Sip at the head and possibly getting one more, but we're not really quite sure how that's going to go yet because the rest of the team is sitting on the outskirts, not really trying to pitch in just yet, but they've already killed Coco, pushing in closer to where that spike is down, knowing the last one is back towards main with the haunt to go off. You know, it's nothing but a sheriff, baby. Swing the guy, do what you can do, and you can find the result as fast as possible.
Now, Max Vince, we've seen Max Vince pull off miracles, but my goodness, how close that one was after taking down Sif with a 6 Seraph shot. And even with the flash that went your direction, almost still finding a kill after the fact. Niner Esports, even when we see that the going gets tough, and George Mason provide what seems like a much more substantial, much more round with more substance behind it, it's just still a defensive powerhouse, and their retake for either side has been near perfect. C's the only player that was taking a tertiary route into sight, knew that there was still one off towards market. You had that 1v1 with Ruda trying to clear the Cypher cam that was placed there and held there by Coco, not realizing Coco was still behind the market stand. Gets taken down. C says, well, they still have to be there. There's no way for them to hold a postman without this angle with the new changes inside B main. I need to remove them from this apex position, the sentinel position. So they go in very direct, win their fight, and then their job is done, and the rest of it comes down to dumping utility and managing your defensive retake for the players remaining on site. And unfortunately, George Mason just didn't have the money, didn't have the credit, something that we've been worried about the entirety of this half so far, which is how bad the scoreline has been. Losing that 3rd round seems like the inevitable will recur the next 4 or 5 if they don't start to tally things in their way, and that's exactly what we've been seeing. Make up for the mistakes, start to get proper weapons in your hands, because we see even with Sheriff's Dallas, GMU are winning gunfights. They're getting really nice clean kills. It's just not enough when Niner Esports have easily retaken every site and you don't know how to stop the player movement. You can get the utility, but the players just move different.
Yeah, they're winning gunfights, but I mean, the ratio isn't really there. I mean, 1 out of every 7 gunfights isn't really the greatest thing. I mean, considering that and looking at these fights, I mean, yes, but most of the times, I mean, keep in mind, I want to say at least out of the 8 rounds we've seen so far, 5 of them have concluded into a 1v3 kind of scenario for GMU. I mean, they've lost way too many players way too fast, and they have to really just kind of slow things down and see when they can let a player on the side of Niner Esports start to overextend, because it's at the point of the game where you feel like confidence is so well up. You will see Ruda push up exactly as you see there, and you can find yourself a bit of a number advantage before the round even gets going, because these executions, when they get into these retakes, they don't have a problem too much of finding the space every here and there of actually getting on the side, but everything that follows that is just horrendous. Already going ahead, turning up the numbers for 1. You know that the Neon's probably be pushing up off the back of that stun, but it's just a bit of a ruse. You're not really stressed about it too much because guess what? It's still nothing but silence. It's nothing but tumbleweeds just going ahead and blowing in the background to let you know that you don't need to really freak out as a team just yet. Find your 2-2 split, sit nice and cozy because you know that with that 40 seconds left on the clock, they're going to be pushing somewhere. Oh my God.
We're seeing George Mason realize, hey, once again, we don't have a Gecko. We can put a lot of players towards Hall, but we need a soft arm towards Short. And I feel like, yes, you can have a two-player heavy quotes there that direction with an Owl Drone following up and getting that information you would really like, but you're still putting all your eggs in the basket that is Hallway, and you're seeing that Niner Esports are able to very quickly capitalize on those early frags and that get-out-of-jail-free card that Smoke is left up in play. That was Pichu. Still standing there, still waiting towards defender spawn, able to close their one. Your job's done. Just Aiden can just wait things out, let you walk back towards you, and secure the 8th round now just in the first half, Dallas, for Niner Esports.
Yeah, just great positioning there. I mean, Niners feel like they were kind of on a tee when it comes around to actually setting up these retakes. They understand exactly where these players at GMU are more than likely going to be, and they just don't overextend themselves in the process. They have to play for a trade. They want to make sure they have some kind of PC utility to work off the backup, and they've been playing that to an absolute tee that is just a masterclass to watch. They haven't overextended themselves in any kind of way, besides the likes of maybe Ruda, keep in mind, who at the very beginning of the round was pushing up into spawn, looking to find an initial kill, didn't really find it, but you saw another player immediately ready there for the backup, knowing that, well, even then, that was risking its own right, because you don't know whether or not somebody's going to hold down that space, saying, okay, we know we definitively found that kill, so we can push onto the A site. But they kind of reconned, back towards that spawn, then went to hit A again to give enough time for that space that you've already acquired to be given up once more.
Soji's going to go for the early peaks and information. This is not usually what we see from the GMU Patriots side. We also usually see more rounds won for them in a first half, but Niner Esports have done a good job of dissolving a lot of the early pressure that George Mason bring to the table. And even when we do see them bring that early pressure where we've had Ruda play into B main and try to hold space, Ruda just rotates to a different angle, now holding bottom of mid. This is where you would typically expect Ruda to maybe die there in a fight with Blaze after missing the first shot, but I don't know how they survived for as long as they did. Ruda was doomed to die. Not really the best spot possible, even for a Neon with your slide, to get out of dodge there. The Niner Esports don't want to give up the refrag for free. They tried to test the limits to seize that direction, but instead, George Mason is just being stalled. Time is being bought, and even with the information coming out from the North that Niner Esports say, we've got market, we've got control. We just now have a rolling thunder that makes us destabilized, stunned, and gives us that free frag for Sip we were hoping for.
Find that space and take advantage of it. I mean, we haven't really seen GMU actually get an entire execution off this yet, and already looking for a round like this. This is the most space they've taken the entire game. They haven't really pushed past that threshold besides maybe what I want to say in like round 2 or 3 when they kind of actually pushed out past the side a little bit. But I mean, that's when they found the most success, when they've caught these players off guard, when they've actually welled up that confidence to take these gunfights and win them. And here we are, off the back of doing just that, and especially with the help of a rolling thunder, they managed to get themselves a second round. But is it a little bit too little too late? We're not really quite sure, but considering the kind of ultimates that are welling up here on the side of Niner Esports side, the kind of money they're working with, if they shut GMU down one more time, I don't know if they're going to have themselves enough money for that, you know, inevitable 12th round coming along.
You think you want like 1,900 on average for your team to get all of your utility to baseline set of weaponry, but they got a couple agents there that have a little bit more pricey utility in comparison to others, and on top of that, their second to top fragger is dealing with a credit disadvantage. 50 left in the back pocket. The bank is screaming, looking like the average college kid's funds. And Niner Esports, well, they're sitting pretty in the bank. They have no problems whatsoever, and they're just going to let GMU roll back into them on site. And even though market door has been cleared, and this has been a big thing for George Mason, a big priority process for them to get through the central hallway, try to clear courtyard as best as possible, and have some sort of advantage in terms of that long-range engagement off towards that market door. Niner Esports just let them have it. They don't really have to push anyone in that direction. Ruda can either push down B main, either push down mid, but they don't really have to engage through that market door. It's a passive approach. And with the neural theft, even if Niner Esports give them a little bit of space, let them play that slow pace, they find a kill, you get the information, and then GMU are forced to push that button, press that shift key, and get into sight as fast as they possibly can, or get cut down to the approach through Hall, where C's now can dump all of the utility they could ever hope for, and unfortunately, just not fast enough.
And even then, going ahead, throwing out the stun and the flash, hoping, Ruda, I need help here! And just, it's nothing but cricket.
30
Hurts
seconds.
to know that teammates are going to leave it in the dust here, but it has to be kind of paid off to some degree. It's just not. But thankfully set there towards the back end to at least find one in the process. A 2v3 scenario here for Niner Esports. They go ahead and find themselves into the retake. You would like to go ahead and at least kind of execute it there when you know they're already down a player, because somebody's hands are occupied getting that spike down. There is no Gecko in play here, and just Aiden can't find a shot to at least make some equilibrium of variable here. Able to go ahead and get a couple more shots on the max fence, so good looking there. Able to go ahead and also TP into the hard shroud. So there's a lot to work with here for GMU, just playing back, hoping that things are giving themselves up, just hoping that the time alone will give them enough of an advantage inside of this match, because keep in mind, they're looking towards that back hole. Coco probably has the freest 2K I've ever seen.
For Pichu, though, good shots to connect. Coco needs to get more and will. You say as easy as 2K. It's a tally on top of the 2K they already had. 4 kills for Coco on the offensive for GMU. And usually Hallway is kind of this blender of success for Niner Esports. They're finally seeing some width, some breadth of fresh air in that direction. And they're going to try to say, hey, A-Side's worked, at least in some capacity. Why don't we try to hit that one once again? Best case scenario now for Niner Esports, despite already being positive, it will be a 9-3 halftime position. GMU are hoping, yeah, it'll still be double the tally in comparison, but 8-4 is a lot more manageable if they can win those pistols defensively and maybe start to find that trickle effect in their favor, like Niner Esports did when they started off with that 5 rounds in a row, breaking that stereotypical start of Valorant competitive and really just saying, hey, we know what we're doing defensively, and we're going to punish you the remainder of this half, where they already get the first blood coming to the last round of round 12.
Yeah, I mean, good looks for him. Able to go ahead and manage that with the Guardian. I mean, that gun, I mean, he always talk about the kind of potential of it and knowing that it's a last round scenario. I mean, it's the best that you can afford. I mean, it is just as good as any other rifle that you've ever seen. There you go. Once again, proving the point. Right through a wall, headshot. It doesn't really show the collateral, but that had to have possibly been a gun, maybe like artifacting the barrel on the other side, just because, I mean, that was essentially what could have seemed like anywhere else. But knowing still with the 2 ultimates to play with, you got to look at that, because those aren't going to be carried into the next half. Sure, you have a neural threat to play with on the side of GMU, but I mean, look at Niner Esports. They got one as well, plus a rolling thunder. So they're saying, go ahead, buddy. Get comfortable. Everybody, go ahead and get on site. Well yourself up into a central location, because guess what? That guy who was sitting towards that back hall, he didn't want to lose the rolling thunder too fast this time. They didn't want to have that to be a variable where that just goes ahead and gets dropped out. So we're going to go ahead, back it up over and over again. Wait for that sound to go off, and here it is. Go ahead, let the thunder roll. As you find yourself at least one in a 2v3 scenario, Niner Esports being at the head of it as they find themselves down one more. The neural theft coming out, players back there towards that cubby, and another player's back towards spawn. Max fence is decayed. You're not going to go for the swing, and if anything, now's the time to do it, Sif, but it's going to be interesting considering that you're playing the slow and steady game when you were surrounded by GMU Patriots.
Here we go. What a round coming out from the Patriots. Just demoralizing Niner Esports and the best chance possible to go that 9-3 half to just dominate offensively, or defensively, I should say, as they transition on over to the offense. That's honestly a mental recovery for the end of that half. 3 in a row saying, yeah, you may have had us at one point sitting at 8-1, but at the very least, we're not going to go into the end of that half saying we did nothing. We didn't feel confident enough to succeed. We were able to finally get full rifles in our hands, back-to-back rounds, and see how the storyline unfolds for it. They're heading in, pistol round, like I said, would be a great chance for GMU to go, hey, that's 5-8, that's an expected 6-8 afterwards, that's 2-round difference. We just got to stabilize if they take the next round after, as you would expect, and just find defensively the same success that Niner Esports did. And I think the Patriots are very much so capable of that near exact same lineup. They know they have information more readily available with that Sova, but the gunfights have been a problem, and they're going to continue to be a problem here if they're not able to keep their guns up high and are not able to stop themselves being ripped asunder by the utility in Steve's pocket.
There it is, that confidence I'm talking about that we need to see on the side of GMU. I mean, they just did not explicit the same way Niner Esports did to go ahead and open up this half. They already said, we're in the lead, we're going to push all the way up into spawn. We're not going to stop. That line of control, that war of attrition, that line of scrimmage we have, we are pushing that all the way down to their end zone. They are exercising the rule of football here. They're integrating different sports to find themselves the results they need, and they've done it so cleanly to get things started off with. Not even just the fact that it was Sif who was at the head of the majority of those kills. Bruno was the one running in and didn't even act as a distraction, was purely there. GMU knew who the threat was and still couldn't isolate that target enough and find that success they need. So the Niners send into another good spot. Almost!
What?
You would think they could, capitalize off the back of that. It's just a singular kill. There's still 4 players alive. Bit awkward of a gunfight there, but everything outside of that umbrella, that singular gunfight, I mean, it's supposed to be good for them. They're supposed to find a 10th here, look for those double digits early, because we talked about that checkpoint chokehold kind of scenario. If you do it right into the 3rd round of the 2nd half, I mean, that's not a stressor at all. You get all the time in the world.
What was going on in that push in through A main? I would expect some assistance to come in behind Ruda. Something Niner Esports will regret. It wasn't the most costly weapon, but the player is costly. That's your top frag. That's your individual best MVP right now. That defensive half, and that's just a Neon. That just proves how accessible they were to the kills, how accessible they were to GMU's generalized strategy of playing very slow and trying to crawl and creep up into space. And even though Ruda was taking very early fights and going in for very aggressive map control angles defensively, they still come out heavily positive. As the plant will go down, seems to begin to place this. Soji will send out a relay bolt and hope for more, but despite having that information, it's given over to the defense of the Patriots. Max Vince and Blaze, Sheriffs and Classics in from short are able to shut down the Niner Esports on this push forward. Aiden has a chance for more. Maybe needs a chance to bait out a dark step. Even though the Shrouded Step gets them a little bit closer, it's just a chance for a shot to hit. But Blaze has found a Bulldog, and this one bites hard, giving the Patriots a 5th round win, and really shocking Niner Esports is expected to start.
Yeah, I mean, there's just something about those TPs where, I mean, there's too much audio cues there. I'm not really quite sure what that was. I mean, I'm possibly going for a fake to kind of go back towards that cubby where that, you know, diagonal station is, but it was something. Wasn't successful. Not really the biggest stressor in the world, though. Still 4-round delta for GMU here to go ahead and overcome. And, I mean, honestly, if their attacking side is looking any hotter, I mean, even then going ahead, shutting things down, a 5-0 start, it technically already is. So, I mean, they got plenty of rounds to go ahead and overcome here. They got not the furthest road ahead of them. I mean, it's a pretty short sprint. So, if they can keep up the results at least a little bit longer, they may even be able to manage to beat Niner to that 10-round threshold, or better yet 11, because, I mean, it's only really 1 here for Niner, so you can't really go ahead and give them too much stress.
Speed up for Niner Esports. They try it, but look at the utility that gets sent back your way. If you're not already having to deal with Coco with essential utility on the B side as expected, and the annoying tripwire, the Cypher cage that's going to come down and slow you down, giving audio cue back the other way, and you know, cut off for information, especially with the one-way potential that's there on top of that market stall. You're also dealing with all of K-Trans utility being sent your direction and a paranoia. There's just too much through that small little funnel that is market door. It didn't really work that well for the Patriots. Maybe Niner were expecting there wouldn't be a lot of utility for this round. It's only the 3rd round of the 2nd half, but pulling off an upset round for round 14 actually pads the pockets of the Patriots quite well. And having that extra little bit of a jingle in the back pocket of the coins rumbling around back there, they're able to just shut down, use everything they possibly could ever want against Niner Esports. And they're left with now only 2 working against the major 5 the Patriots is still having and handling. As 2 players will face off against 2, it seems, on this A side. Pichu wanting intel, gets a good shot off to 1, but Soji comes out unexpectedly from behind Cubby and guarantees that it's only C's, and a 1v5 with 8 HP now remaining. It seems a nigh impossibility, and it will be an impossibility unless C's pulls the miracle out the back pocket, but you only get 1. Would you really like to use it when you're already so far ahead this early in your best of 3?
Yeah, nice flawless round to go ahead and get things back on the board here for GMU. I mean, obviously winning that last round, but finally managed to get themselves a full buy round and in a flawless fashion at that. Finally going ahead and giving the spotlight of what we saw earlier in the season, the first time they were on broadcast. Seeing the GMU that we actually know and that we enjoy to watch, kind of seeing their just plays and just how clean they are with their shots. I mean, knowing that even then there's still a couple rounds left for them to even manage to get the lead. While the shots and the crosshair looks good when you look at your entire screen, it spells a bit of a different story right now. So they got to go ahead and see what they can manage over the course of these next couple rounds. And I think, I mean, still, it's not other amorous possibilities, but that last round wasn't a go for Niner Esports. So it's a bit of a different story. But as things already open up here, Pichu, one of your main guys who is absolutely fragging on that first half, holding down that B site by their lonesome. They've got themselves not the best result here to open up this first round. But, I mean, as things are going, I mean, you can't stress that too much. You still got your initiators, you still got your duelists, you still have a controller. So, I mean, you got some control, but I mean, Niners, I just want to see what their attacking side looks like. First round, outstanding. Everything past that point, well, it hasn't been the cleanest looking. I want to see whether or not we see some adjustments because they're checking over towards the A side in main. Now they're checking up mid a little bit. And they just got to see if they can catch this guy that overextends initially, just kind of clear him out.
Max Vince, maybe a chance to surprise somebody on the approach for Niner Esports. I mean, we already saw the early engagement that came forward from the rush down of your Neon to the Patriots. That's very reminiscent from what we saw from Ruda on Niner in the entirety of that first half. Niners still have that chance to get into the B side. They gave the information early out, and they're going to give even more information here late. And this is where we talked about that fatal funnel once again in terms of utility, having to deal with Coco, having to deal with K-Tran, and with all of that directly into your face. I think the Niners are going to be forced to say, hey, I just don't think Mark is it, guys. I think if we want to take advantage of what we're bringing to the table and who we are as a team in terms of speed, why don't we just bull rush into B main instead? Because Market has failed every single time, and not just in simple ways, but in drastic ways. If it's not flawless, it might as well have been flawless, and this one was. That's 4 rounds into the second half, even with you winning the pistol, and you're on the end of that 3-to-1 split.
And even, I mean, it's not like it's not working on this side. It hasn't worked on the other side yet. I mean, that market hold has been just outstanding from both teams in terms of that defensive hold. And I mean, it just feels like a bit of a fort that you really just can't break through. And even then, you talk about it being flawless, it might as well be flawless. I mean, it's at that point where if it's not flawless, it's a waste of time. Just because, I mean, you have so many players drop in the process that you go ahead, you're pushing on a site with maybe 1-2 remaining players in a 2v4. And it's at that stage where it's like, can we even get the spike down to this point and find the space necessary to even make this look like a legitimate hold? And the answer to that has felt like no every single time, pretty definitively. So knowing that Niners to go ahead and take out this timeout and kind of see what they can manage here for this next round, they do have a rolling thunder, at least clear out a little bit of space for themselves. And as you can tell on the map, they're pinging out that B side. Kind of trying to eye that out a little bit. See if they want to go for a main approach. See if they can just kind of squeak something out over there. And I wouldn't blame them. A site's been a bit awkward. That kind of mid side, hallway has been also a little bit awkward. And honestly, if you go for either one of those, you just go ahead and stack up an extra player because that's where your Neon has usually been playing. You haven't really seen the Neon too much here towards that B main pushing out. But here we are once more. Oddly enough, it's like Soji's stream sniping right now because that's where they're sitting ready to roll and just slide out and find at least hopefully one. But if you got every single player of Niners over here, you're hoping that you don't at least lose a body in that process.
We've noticed how the Patriots played that macro game and trying to fight for those gold orbs as fast as possible in the first half. Maybe Niner Esports want to do the same thing, have the chance for it. That is an eco round that's just started off positively for them, but since then, and trying to swing out of a dark cover that is truly in the favor of the Patriots, doesn't pan out. Get your lumps, get your 2 kills, collect the rifles of the players that swung into B main, and then get out of there. There's no need to continue to stay into that side and continue to pound the rock in through B main, despite the fact I said maybe B main is the only option to be.
No,
that doesn't change that there's a whole other site with plenty more options in front of you. And the options, well, they're plentiful because no one's here to defend you. And C's maybe has a chance to steal away a huge frag here and take the head off Blaze. The stinger stings. And now the Patriots are down a player with a player disadvantage with a site retake in front of them.
I mean, that was a complete toss-up of an actual possibility there. I mean, obviously they turned tail and went to the other side. I mean, but they had so much potential. They could have gone for the Rolling Thunder. They had 2 more players there to go ahead and find those fights, knowing they had the advantage because they would have been stunned. Meanwhile, the 2 players on the site would have been. But still, you got that Rolling Thunder, the Nightfall here for the retake. You can wait for a tap to go off. You know a guaranteed player will be there on site once you get that thing rolling. But problem is that one player that's there, well, they still are, because the TP and the lap-arounds occur. You got a 3v1 scenario, and this is a situation where Niners don't care if they die. They had nothing to lose because they came into the round with nearly nothing. The only thing worth keeping was those ultimates, but guess what? You found an opportunity that was worth using it, and they made that work in dividends.
Talk about the MVP of that round. It's C's for sure for Niner Esports. Yeah, a little bit of utility early through B main, but most of that was sent from the Patriots to try to keep Niner back. Again, the Rolling Thunder that you were highlighting early and saying this would be huge for them. It comes in at the end of the round after all of the setup that C's went for. Catches both of those players, keeps them off that spike, forces them to bad gunfights, gives you a free B1, and then it's a simple 3v1 after the fact with no time left and remaining, and it's just keeping the win condition out of their hands. And you even found that one free B kill off to Blaze of all people we see right here watching and waiting, maybe hoping for an owl drone for intel here. You had Blaze getting down by that stinger, and just a combination from C's. And Ruda! How many times do we see Ruda have conceivably good gunfights that should go their way that don't end the way that you would expect? Niner Esports even engaging for a lot of utility. They wanted to use the Nightfall. They wanted the information to site. They want to be able to send the Prowlers and Haunts out more effectively and mark these players with the decay. And they don't get any actual impact off of it. And they force Aiden to have to go off to this A site to try to create space where Yeah, it's only one active defender, but there's now a second one coming in quite quickly, and that is someone on the Patriots you don't want to have to deal with.
You still got Pichu up the middle of the map. You have a little bit of alert going on here. I mean, even then, a great transition being made here by the Niners. Even then, they found themselves lost not only one player, but two in the process. They had just a setup for something miraculous to happen. But the problem is the execution just isn't there because there's a big chokehold, which is just that singular player there to go ahead and cut you off. And, well, with an idea where that last player may be, there it is. A flawless round as a result, just choking out every single possibility. I mean, GMU just read it all, and they were ready for it. Didn't even really have to invest too much in the process because, I mean, look at these ultimates. 4 of them ready to roll. Speaking of roll, Rolling Thunder being one off as well. So, I mean, just a great look for them. The stabilization in this game, while they look like completely dismantled in that first half, they have really kind of put themselves together during these last couple rounds, and they've just looked like the team that we've known to see the entirety of the season.
I feel like Niner Esports are really trying to play into that Fade, that Sif and Ruda combo, right? The Fade and Neon. And I don't know, I honestly feel like maybe they would have been better off with something like that Soba that you were highlighting earlier, that maybe the Patriots had the right pick for their agent selection. And it's probably all off the back of the fact that Ruda has not been playing up to their full potential and just hasn't been able to actualize what Neons can do in towards the site. Just counterplayed by the Patriots near perfectly. There is information for the Patriots as Niners step into sight, but it may not be enough to deny them the spike plant, and the post plant will be guaranteed. The problem is there's just no weapons for the attack. That could be one potentially gained, and a second one if they can just find the hit to K-Tran. Maybe you have Aiden pull out something, but the only thing they're pulling out is their life into this next round, because it will go 10-9 to take the split. The Patriots are on a surge back into this.
Yeah, I mean, even then, just by very, very definitive round wins, I mean, 3 or more players alive at the end of each. I mean, we've seen 2 flawlesses in this half so far. I mean, they've just been putting themselves right back into prime shape. I mean, they've been able to find themselves at least every single kill necessary, but even then, without really burning too much in the process. That was the first round they really got into a stage where they said, okay, we're going to have to invest a little bit. We're going to have to throw some of these ultimates out there. But you had so much to work with. You know, you got plenty of rounds remaining in the game. I mean, that's probably the best time to do it. Just go ahead, make sure you can do it whenever they have themselves in a scenario where you're like, all right, let's have the majority of our players by the end of this round. They've had better rounds before, but it's not too much of a stressor. Soji, though, finally, that top frag we talked about, that duo that was working out so great on that defense, still can't really find the same results on the attacking side of the map. Pushing up, trying to find those hits, and it's just not really coming to them.
It's just Ruda's in a really bad spot. It's hard to see Niner Esports coming back into a map comfortably when their arguable best player and maybe kind of the mental leader of this team on the offensive as that duelist role now being a noticeable absence for this team. It feels like a 4v5, and on top of that, when they die, your team's using so much utility to get them into that space just to die, and you're also feeding into the ult tallies for the Patriots. It's a lot dirtier than you would imagine at the end of the day. Sees though, sends off utility in towards defender spawn. Trap with the trap wire, maybe a chance for Coco to get a shot to Seize, but that's not going to happen. Instead, gets tagged on the way through the Cypher cage. Is not able to find the impact they would have liked. There's the camera maybe tagging a player on site. Aiden has a chance to Shrouded step out and will do so off towards Paul. Here's the Hunter's Fury from Blaze, and even though there wasn't a lot of information it felt like there for the Patriots, they still managed to find a kill off the back of it and gain the player advantage they would hope for, and are now dumping that utility from K-Tran to try to flush these players and haul out the gate. There is one straight headshot for Aiden. Maybe a chance.
Oh my God!
Lined up for a 4K, but Pichu now has the weight of this round on their shoulders, and Blaze wants all the heat. The Patriots tie us up at 10-10.
It's a Cypher. He's not going to swing me, and that's exactly what he doesn't do. Go ahead, a little bit of a jump peek. I mean, that player model's going to go right back up and go in a circle. Go ahead, looking like a dove. We're just shooting birds at this point, but I mean, as it stands, I mean, great looks here by GMU, able to go ahead and manage one more. I mean, finding themselves 2-3 free. So we talk about the win streak. They're finding themselves plenty of money to play with just on a round-to-round basis because they haven't really had to use too much in that process. But speaking of money, we're investing a lot of it on Soji because we're breaking out an operator. And it's going to be interesting because, I mean, Soji, I feel like, has been very impactful in kind of pushing up and finding these early picks, kind of like you want your Neon to do. But too many scenarios has happened for Ruda more times than not where it just hasn't really worked out. Speaking of Ruda, that ultimate's out. You're looking to shock as many players as possible. You're playing Overwatch, not Valorant anymore. You can only find one. You get a little bit more damage off the back end there, but it's not going to be enough to go ahead to really find the kills needed. And even then, speaking of kills, Siege trying to find something off the back of the pickup of the Vandal, but I mean, just getting way too desperate to say, I want to have a piece of this too.
And this is such a piece of your proverbial pie, such an important puzzle. You don't want to lose that breach so soon. It's,
oh my
it's
God.
desperate for no reason. Now Pichu has to play alone. The defuse does not get stuck into half. Pass off towards Coco. Random shots connected to OG, but Coco. Oh my goodness, Pichu, how many times will you get right there, 1 kill away from securing a much-needed Niner Esports round win in the second half? Only the Patriots to strip it back your way. And who else but your doppelganger of Coco out-ciphering the Cypher, it feels like. You are looking at a desperate measure, 4 rounds in a row, 11-10, and a timeout for the Niners being required to get their headspace clean.
Thing is, you can only ask so much of Pichu. I mean, being on the attacking side now, having an outstanding first half, I mean, there's only so much a Cypher can realistically do. In a retake scenario, I mean, obviously, you're saying just set up the post plan, have all that util just ready to roll. That's exactly what they do. And then it gets down to a scenario where you're not finding the right shots. A couple things are lining up. And speaking of lining up, 2 players being picked off there by Soji. It's just there's too many things not happening that Niner Esports just needs one of those things to slip through the cracks, and it just doesn't really happen, especially in a retake scenario. So, I mean, the 2 ultimates to play with right now, the Neural Theft being one on Front of the Shadows the other, that's not too much worth of a timeout call. It's more so the long-term plan of how they're going to get themselves at least one more, force that thing out, and hopefully have enough money in the next round to get themselves into a stage where they can possibly clinch that out, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking at the OT situation right now, being in a deficit, because when you look at this entire half, things haven't been too hot, and they have to get back on that defending side to find themselves a bit of a rally to get back into this thing and really feel themselves back in a good form.
They're coming into this one, but yeah, they can have rifles for everybody, but 4 to the 5 can't have full armor. You can't even have a real rifle for Civ. Sans Guardian has fallen into a lot more of a meta choice in terms of being thrifty, and Civ does sit further back in terms of their composition as they gauge into sight, but all the time, Civ has been dying when the utility's still in their hands. They haven't had a chance to really fight back. Same problem we've seen for Birdie on the other end. It's just Niner Esports have to rethink the entirety of their attacking strategies. The Patriots can keep doing what they're doing. It doesn't feel like very many variations for Niner Esports will find an answer for how strong defensively the Patriots have proven they can and will continue to be at this rate. It's a slow prowl up. 1 soft arm off towards the B site, maybe hoping that they give some information that they are heading that direction. But I think Blaze just got the intel. They're hoping for a secondary swing. And that says, hey, we've got to start to engage, throw up the dark cover one way, setting the haunt up over the top. And Niner Esports, just a waste of util. They're just trying to play that small battle, try to bait out a rotation from the Patriots. And that was successful. But Coco is still locking down this B side, a lot like we saw Pichu in round 6 do for that quick from the shadows that came out from 8 on the other end. Pichu had yet to really secure any space safely towards B. And now in the process is giving away full information that this rotate will in fact be coming through. And Niner Esports will have to start pedaling that metal towards this side if they want to actually commit.
Looking really for anything here, playing slow and steady, but I mean, too slow if you ask me. I mean, you're sitting at 20 seconds left on the clock. You got to make an execution somewhere, and you already see this set up towards market. That's an easy call for the rest of the team, saying, look, it has to be the B side. There is nowhere else they can go. They will not have the time. They have the from the shadows, but I mean, you don't want to leave a player out on an island like that. So already going ahead, getting the plant off, player down. Not the biggest deal in the world, but it really comes down to the retake. Everybody's kind of taking the same exact avenue, coming back to this market. This is the kind of scenario that we saw during that first half where Niners have to hold down this market. And, I mean, they're technically on the defensive end now. They're the ones holding it. They're the ones hoping players will come right to their crossfire. And that's what they've done, at least for the majority of the time. It's just not enough to really find all the safe, secure kills you want out of a round, because GMU come out on top and find themselves in a match point scenario.
Niner Esports were your 9-seeded team coming into playoffs, and they were pulling off a ridiculous triumphant story at the end of that first half and throughout the entirety of that first half. And now the Patriots have said, yeah, there's a reason why we are number 1. We are the top dog. We are the team everyone's looking at in the SEL. In the second half, there was just no questions about it for us. They're now at match point for our first map of this series. And if it continues like this, Niner Esports, I don't know where the Mental will have to go. They'll have a longer timeout, so to say, as we go to a break between map 1 and 2. But you cannot count them out just yet. It's just a problem again of the eco where they force last round. They have to play into it, and thankfully so, they have ultimates to work with. Maybe something comes out here from C's, who's been one of the better initiators in this game and has arguably been the most important in terms of breach utility. Just doesn't really have the forward front players to get those early picks that is so desperately needed for this Niners Esports offense to kick off the gear. There's the 2 they're asking for, but it's Sif to do it, and at the cost of 95 HP.
I mean, you're not even worried about that, though. I mean, you found yourself 300 worth of HP in the process, and all you've done is lost yourself an initiator. Sure, the one that's full of intel, but I mean, realistically, you don't need that too badly. Because, I mean, while Sif has been a fragger, I mean, the utility, as I mentioned, hasn't really been much comparative to the likes of Sova. So you're going ahead, you investing this Rolling Thunder onto the side, seeing what you can kind of get running there, but the problem is too many players are too far back and just can't get the result wanted. Because Niners, they're in a do-or-die scenario right now. First round underway, looking to go ahead and close this thing out. They find themselves at least one off the back of season. It's 2v2, narrow threat to play with. So, I mean, there is potential here. They can find a possible kill. Possibly good if they end up lining up. Problem is, it's just an old-fashioned Western lineup there. But instead of it's a bit of a team tag battle, and already you see GMU, when you look at the shots they've been hitting during the entirety of that second half, they're more likely to win that one.
Yeah, that's the second, no, maybe even third time we've seen C's try to slow walk up through short there on A and try to take that lower position behind Covey. And look what happened the very first time it happened. It was an easy headshot to clean up. The second time, they weren't really impactful or useful for the team. And that last time there, well, it wasn't a really big change up for shifting the aim from Coco to go ahead and conclude and close out those final 2 players for the final 2 frags needed to send us into map 2. Just a dirty map, it feels like, for Niner Esports. And the Patriots, a very well-deserved victory, a huge comeback in the second, and they felt like they were truly in the driver's seat from the moment that second round got into the books, where they say, okay, we gave you the first. That's a problem, but it's not enough of a problem for us to worry. Look at that scoreline would have differed, though. It would have been 11-13 if they had gotten the pistol afterwards and gotten their bonus. That would have given them a much cleaner chance for round 3. GMU, that's one single round worth of mistakes Niner, that's one single round worth of mistakes that theoretically, in the grand scope of things, actually cost you that entire half and conceivably that entire map.
That's usually how it goes. I mean, even then, I mean, think about the 1, 2, 3, 1v1 scenarios we saw there towards that spike plan. I mean, obviously, we saw Pichu win those 2 out combined with that first round. We could go ahead, chop up this map. I mean, what, probably 10 minutes ago, because I just feels like, I mean, those situations are so darn important. But the issue is not putting a singular player. You can't dish it down to those 1v1s. It comes down to the rest of the team actually putting those players into those 1v1 scenarios, because you never want to put your team or any one of your players with already so much weight on their shoulders, the performance like everybody else to be, where they have to be the end all be all. But one thing we can go ahead and at least throw out there is, I mean, K-Tran being at the top of the board, obviously, Ruda, Sif, secondary. I mean, that makes total sense. But I mean, when you look at everybody on the side of GMU, they were mostly positive, sure, which I mean was a huge testament to that secondary half. But it's odd enough also to see just how K-Tran was up there towards the top, because I wasn't very impressed by the utility usage comparative to what we saw out of C's and their utility usage. I mean, around the same amount of assists, but it just felt like C's was kind of there in the more impactful moments. Meanwhile, K-Tran was just kind of in the background, just planting all the seeds, pulling all the strings, and next thing you know, saying, this is my game at the end of the day. So you got to really keep your eyes peeled for, everybody else in the process here, because there's a lot more underlying factors, I feel like, behind GMU than really meets the spotlight.
Yeah, Niner Esports, how are you going to figure out which players, which factors, what is causing the problems, and what caused those problems, and how are you going to make up for that? Because the worst thing you have now is the possibility of seeing a map 3 over on Split if you try to force this out and have to go into all 3. Otherwise, if you can't find the answer for why GMU are doing so well, a lot like every other team in the SCL has failed to find the answer for why GMU are going so well in their face-offs against them, you're going to be relegated just like everybody else has been, and you're going to fall to those top dogs, and you're going to see why they are that #1 team. But until then, map 2 is coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more SCL action. We'll see you guys soon. GMU pull off an 8-4 halftime recovery to not just get through that second half, but looks like dominate that second half there, Dallas. And there's a reason why they're the #1 seeded team, and they stamped that in the hearts and mind of everyone watching and participating in that lobby. That's going to set up a level of fear, it feels like, in the Niner Esports as we now move on over to our second map, where breaches were already a problem on our first map of the day. Now they're even more of a problem. We're going to Haven, baby.
Yeah, and even, I mean, going ahead, looking obviously at GMU and what they accomplished during that first map. I mean, I said it earlier. I mean, obviously, you're looking at the likes of, you know, Niners only got themselves 2 rounds during that half, while GMU during the first one, they only got 3. Wasn't a big discrepancy between these two teams at the end of the day, or at least of that map. And knowing that going into map number 2, that Niners was that close to shutting down that team and found themselves an early lead is going to be kind of picking at them in the back a little bit. But I mean, going forward, there's still a lot of time, a lot of game left to play. But the biggest differential, I would say, in terms of the actual rounds was GMU and how they were warming up. Their shots weren't really there to go ahead and get things started off with. Their holds weren't looking all that hot when they were on the attacking side. But at least when it came around on that defense, we saw, and more times than not on their first half, it was more kind of 3v1 scenarios. That was your kind of bottom line for Niners and what their result for a round should be. Meanwhile, for GMU, pretty early on, they found themselves 2 flawlesses and at least 2 more rounds where they have 4 players alive. So it's about those small differences of how they keep their players alive, how they approach these trades, and at one tip, they really just kind of set things whenever they're on the defense.
And defense was dominating, right? It was a suffocating type of composition and a suffocating map to really have to play into in the offensive, especially when your duelist wasn't being able to lock in as necessarily as high and mighty as you would have liked. Dallas is making a face. It's the double neon. That is expected from what we were saying. I was very shocked to actually see, as I said, Soji earlier. I expected them to go to the Jet because they are pretty damn good at the Jet, to be totally frank. But they still want to go for both Neon. They do bring out finally having that Sova in place. Sif says, I do not want to deal with the Fade any further. We talked about that in our break. This is about the exact lineup and composition we're expecting. The only shocker to me is Coco's not on that Cypher and is over on the KJ. That's a little bit of an antiquated strategy. Still good, I guess, but there's a reason why Cypher is top dog and the #1 Asian pick for Sentinels.
Go, go, go!
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it forces players off site. Obviously, like the biggest differential between those two is the ultimate. But one takes so much longer to get hold of. And then also the fact that you have to be near your utility. So, I mean, considering if you have a Neon, say, inside this map, and you do ever get forced off a rotate, say if a team's really good at exuding that pressure and forcing these rotates out from teams, and if we see Niners just kind of really take advantage of that, especially, as I mentioned, with a Neon. So if you see, like, say, Suji early on kind of going off and going on a little tangent, you're going to be forcing out relatively early. And your util just kind of goes to a complete and utter waste.
See how wasteful it's going to be. They at least get to start on defense, so a little bit of a luxury in regards to seeing that utility be impactful sooner. But I would maybe expect, since we saw both sides really play hyper aggressive on the defense, maybe that's not the play in comparison to Sunset. Haven still has a lot of viability there, especially offensively, where previously, I was going to mention, there's only 2 objectives to play into on our previous map, and this time you have 3, which means offensively it'll be a whole lot easier to find maybe that gap in the defensive position, maybe that weakness there that they can try to poke into and get success in towards the side, because round 1, Niner Esports not only get that first blood, take down the duelist for GMU, but now also are able to get into sight and get that spike down, but it's costing them a whole lot more than expected. Coco with the classic gets 2, yes, is dealt with, but it's refrag for refrag, and Max Vince is still standing down below in hell and looking to send players there as the double swing out with the right clicks coming out. It's GMU saying, yeah, you may get sight, you may get first blood, but we're getting this round.
I'm genuinely shocked they did. I mean, looking at that corner shot, I mean, there was one player just looking at the onslaught of utility coming onto site, and that's just a player that's completely wide open. Eyes untethered. I mean, everything is just wide open. All 5 senses still intact, and just not really able to find all the necessary kills to really kind of give your team that space that you want. But it's round number 1. A bit of mistakes, not the biggest deal in the world, but if anybody's able to go ahead and capitalize off the back of round number 2, and the winning the pistol. We don't. It's GMU. That's a complete wild card because we don't know. They haven't won one yet, so we'll see whether the streak really starts to unravel and you find yourself maybe in more than 5 rounds. But that's the current record we got set by Niners during that first half of the first night.
They're forced off and away from B, but they do burn a lot of the utility that's coming out from the Patriots. Issue is, unable to burn any of the player counts. Coco able to find 2 just like they did previously, and Max Vince, who is all over the place. It's a buddy ace between your Oven and your KJ for the Patriots defense. And Niner Esports tried to put a whole lot of falsified effort into the B, willing to take the rotate through Link, willing to get into the C site and try to find some level of success there, and nothing stands positively their way, and they don't drop nearly enough of the weapons that were bought from the Patriots in round 2, which means they have it for round 3, and since they saved what felt like 3 out of the 5 of their players, they can actually buy a little bit more than they would have expected, something like an extra stinger to do, an outlaw to cap in, and even a bulldog now stepping into round 3, hoping to find that first blood, maybe with Soji again, with the outlaw. No, it's a Spectre. They want to push in through C-Long.
Yeah, I want to at least take that space as fast as possible. Create a bit of a standstill there, force these players on the Niners side to at least kind of go ahead and hold up. And even then, better yet, going ahead and get them to invest in owl drones. So going ahead, knowing no players inside that cubby, they already invested enough utility. Go ahead and kind of get out scot-free, get themselves back onto the C site. This is at a point now where you know exactly what you're working with on this half of the map. You know the neons over towards the C site. You know the breaches over there as well. So if you do want to go ahead and find yourself maybe on a retake scenario and find yourself with a plan, it would be great because, well, you're waiting for a breach to get on site before you can really engage that retake to really get anywhere. But they're still looking toward that left side of the map. They're still looking at that B, C kind of courtyard area of the map. They're looking to see if anybody kind of really goes ahead and kind of extends out too much, but we haven't really seen anything just yet.
We're just waiting. Right there at the visible end of it. And wow, Patron gets shots off first. They don't expect it, but they already dropped them fairly low. It was an easy cleanup afterwards. The Niner Esports have that player advantage they've been so patiently playing for. You can get the spike down. Now Coco working from defender spawn, maybe hoping for assistance through garage, but Niner Esports are slowly getting that damage out and relocating themselves down through C-Long, where all 4 remaining individuals will hope in for this post-plant scenario. Soji just tries to burn out maybe the possibility of anyone being remaining on site, and this Alojone guarantees it. No one's here, Patriots. I apologize. You got to deal with Niner Esports now in a post-plant scenario all the way down C-Long. Aiden's doing something. Not sure what they're cooking, but it has gone bad, and Ruda makes it worse. It's a 3K for the first round of Niner.
Able to keep 3 of their players alive in the process, too. I mean, so a great round result for them. But, I mean, still, it could always be better. But, I mean, you're not really too beat up about that process whatsoever. You're happy to actually see the standard lineup, the standard result of those first 3 rounds start to actually go into what we typically see as a tried and true. But now we're seeing Soji relatively earlier on, as I mentioned, possibly sweeping over to that operator. We were expecting maybe the Jet to kind of come out off the back of it because of Soji's purchase of the operator during that last map of his latter stages. And I was kind of expecting that because you want to go into a kit or at least an agent that actually plays into that operator. But I mean, the Jet maybe just not working out just because of how quick it feels like you're hitting things compared to that kind of just entire rotation power and pure mobility that, well, Neon does provide. Essentially the same thing. You have a big massive wall that lasts just as long as the cloud burst, if not goes even further, so covers more space. You got the just mobility, not only in terms of a certain scenario, but you have the slide off the back of it, which when you have a Vandal to play with, it's even better than technically the dash, I would say, because you're getting that slide off, which is already a nightmare to hit, but it's perfectly accurate for the Neon as well. And then your ultimate, it's also another weapon, just like the Blade Storm is. So, I mean, Neon just being so darn big in terms of these duelist kind of competitions that are going on here that, I mean, you really can't blame for opting in for that as well.
Take this. Go,
Having
go,
no
go.
first bloods up to this point, Southeastern Esports a lot of, well, not really a whole lot of confidence that they would work with. It gives GMU Patriots a much better shot now coming into a post-plant scenario, as this A-side spike will eventually go down, confirming that Southeastern Esports will have control over site, and they have only 4 players directly here. They're only just now sending your Cypher off on a lap around. Sees, though, utility and gone up, able to find 2 kills, and it is a Niner Esports demolishing of the defense of the Patriots, despite the fact that it was a 4 versus 5 on site, and a slow transition from Pichu on that wraparound in through B main, not finding any impact. The rest of the team, though, carries the weight that's required of them, and they'll keep this series now tied once again at 2-2, where the Patriots got the eco. It's going to be a thrifty round for them.
I mean, and even then, I think this is one team that could possibly do it. It really comes down to the actual site that we see Niners want to go ahead and find themselves working towards it. It looks like the C site. They understand the kind of economy they're up against. And they understand that, I mean, if they get back to that scenario where they can just hold down that C main area of the map, go ahead and just spam out that spike over there towards C, then, I mean, what kind of guns you had to work with? You had a bunch of sheriff spans coming through, but I mean, those Vandals can do the same exact damage at that same kind of range. You got a bullet spam off the back of it. And better yet, you got a lead in terms of players. Because Ruda pushing up to the A side of the map. The rest of the team isn't even behind them because, well, it's a Neon. They're going to go do whatever they want to do. And, well, hopefully we can catch up and get the spike down because we didn't really expect that rogueness to happen. Already going ahead, finding 3. I won't blame Ruda to say just go ahead and drop the gun, whip out the classic, and just try to right-click around some corners.
K-Tran's hoping for something. Soji's going to have to sprint off towards site and go for more. The Patriots are looking at a 2-3 split with the Niner Esports taking the lead. That is as you would expect. They're hoping they can drop some of the weapons out of their hands and maybe get a chance for a frag or 2 so they can maybe get closer to the pips on their ultimate. Shots going out. Soji rifle working forward as that first initial fragger trying to play with that crossover, but it's a bit of a patient game and they're leaving players back. They're getting more impact than expected. What is going on site? Maybe a chance. Soji swinging for more. Pichu's got no HP. Soji can just stick this down. There's no chance.
Thrifty.
How are you pulling that off with 0.15 Patriots?
It's purely just a prayer point at that stage. I mean, you go ahead, have a player stick, have a player fight, but I mean, when you have the stick going off, it really comes down to whether or not you can actually see the kind of bubble pop during that mid stage. And I can guarantee you, considering there was nothing there but just a stick. I mean, that player was watching that defusal, looking at the stage with the visual cues lined up to let you know whether or not you could actually get the stick off. So, I mean, good looks. Able to go ahead, kind of have that backup there. GMU able to go ahead and clutch out that round, keep things rolling, and give themselves one more to play with.
Max Vince, the player, was highlighting in our break a lot now, saying, hey, last time we saw them on Haven, they dropped nearly 30 kills. They were such a pivotal figure for their team. And the Patriots, maybe they can show off and more than just Max Vince this time around. We head into the site. Ruda tries to go in, does so well. Palpatine impression cooking, and Max Vince gets roasted alive by the electricity rolling through Ruda's fingertips. Coco off through mid, maybe aware of the fact that that Cypher of Pichu is trying to worm their way in through Central. They do still have the option of going out through Garage. That player advantage still roaring in the ears of Niner Esports. Chance no, and that's the worst possible timing in the world for Ruda as K-Tran strikes in for an effective frag. Pichu trying to wait alongside C's, hoping that maybe they won't be able to keep them back, but it's a strike in again for the defense. How does Coco let that one go through? Rolling thunder for Niner. It doesn't matter because Soji rips through your own backline and C's is left alone. Stick the defuse. No chance you're surviving it again. It is a dominating round for your duelists, but it's Soji that comes out in priority.
I mean, considering that you lost the players there to go ahead and start the round off with, you didn't nuke the entire team. So there's still a lot of wild cards available because JMU now has the expectation knowing what they're up against and what they got left to work with. But, I mean, seeing even then, not only just the rounds that they've acquiesced so far, it's the manner in which they've done it. Blaze is sitting at 0-5 for this game so far. Hasn't gotten a taste of blood yet. But yet, still, it's sitting in a lead with the rest of his team. Thankful that, okay, I mean, so long as my assists are doing enough, if this guy ever steps up, this league could just go ahead and exponentialize.
Soji's trying to play in
There it
pretty
is.
heavily towards long. This is maybe you would expect a tailwind from a Jet. You do have the ability to slide out as a Neon, but it takes a second to get that utility actually popped and get out of dodge. It's just not an availability for the Patriots come this round through. Round 7's looking pretty hot right now on the offensive for Niner Esports. Everyone on the Patriots side has fallen away from A site. And you do have Spike still sitting a little bit further back inside A main, but Sif and Katran have guaranteed at least the control over the site here. Or sorry, Sif and Caesar have guaranteed this A side control. The fallback from the Patriots will allow for them to retake this A objective, which statistically is the most favorite objective for retakes in the game of Valorant. But it doesn't matter if the players and the wraparounds from Pichu try to at least shut down a lot of the availability of those players stepping in through Lankus. I don't know why Niner Esports are hunting for frags and not even putting that spike down. That puts Blaze in a very good spot to pick up a frag and maybe deny the spike, but they were just slightly off, and they spot out C's lying around the corner of Hall, and they force now the player to rush back off towards short, join the player Pichu, who's had to run away on their own, and say, hey, we now have got 4 against your 3, and this is where that lockdown of the KJ difference comes in.
Yes, seeing really how this retake's going to go underway. I mean, you see Niners just kind of chilling out there for a little bit to the last possible millisecond to really get something going, but it's Ajax on site still with that from the shadows, able to go ahead and avoid that, but off the back of it, not able to find 1 but 2, but it's just not enough because nobody really wanted to push that tire diffusal going off. It was purely Aiden there. I mean, you had to find the pinch play, and you just didn't really get it. So 5th round to play with there. 2 ultimates invested. One of them paying off. The other one getting a couple kills to kind of get it back relatively quickly. But, I mean, it's just not enough here for Niners because they just need rounds.
We saw the problem that came through in the second half where offensively teams were struggling. We're seeing it again in this first half so far over on Haven. Just defensively, too much utility being sent their way. Katran was very good at counteracting a lot of the utilities being sent by Niner Esports at the end of map 1 and throughout the entirety of map 1. And we saw C's be the better overall utility user, but just the slowness of the rest of the kit for the team gave too much over to Katran and allowed for the Patriots to just shut down so much of that speed and swiftness that Niner Esports were bringing. It looks to be a little bit of the same glaring issues, but now it's coming on the retakes and the inavailability to get out of that site before the Patriots start to apply the pressure and cinch in upon their positions. The Rolling Thunder comes out now from C's. Coco wants to swing off towards Platt alongside Blaze, gets some deals with Ruda. Everyone's stuck on site. This is going to have to be a direct gunfight, and it's just not something that's going to go in Niners' favor as C's as the last player standing. Paranoia to short-sided out, 71 HP, no armor to their name, stuck between a concussive blast and an Omen in through Hall. It is a Patriots round win, and nothing really gained out of it for Niner Esports.
Not bad.
Yeah, just a difficult half for them so far. I mean, obviously things not looking up too much, and seeing the only 2 rounds they've really gone ahead and acquired was during those initial kind of stages before we've seen the GMU kind of get a read of what they're playing, the kind of pacing of this team on the attacking side. And even then, better yet, getting a read. I mean, one of those was off the back of a round where they had a definitive win, and that was off the spray down from C main and just kind of going ahead, pelting that site with bullets. But the second one being just one of the most beautiful holds we've seen out of Niners so far, in that retake that occurred over towards the A side. That was just an absolute butchering. But since then, they haven't really had any of those lineups or even those round starts. They kind of feel like they can get enough space to really find that same result. They're not allowing to get these setups. They're not allowing to get these kind of holds and these plants off relatively early because they're just being contested on a constant basis because GMU knows that that's the last thing they want to do. If they go ahead and throw enough buddies or bodies, better yet, onto the problem before, I mean, the actual hold really starts to occur, they know that Niners are going to have a hard time just really holding things down.
It doesn't have the ability to get out of there.
Literally an ear piercing. That was so close. That was almost a black screen shot. Let's go. Sorry.
There you go. COD reference. There you go. Now, for real though, Max Spence doesn't have the ability to get out of that position, so you have to go one fight. Arguably should have been given it. Niner Esports have somehow pulled a mountain out of a molehill. Aiden's now hoping that maybe Katran can pull something out of it, but it's just not happening.
Don't interrupt.
Every single player for the Patriots is able to come out of nowhere. We saw Coco shut down Pichu 2 out of their 3 clutch round attempts in that last map. We saw 3 for Pichu that all had failed, and it felt like the Patriots, and really both teams, but more so the Patriots, were a team that could frag together and win together, and every player is able to step up to the plate. And Coco has been swinging nothing but homers. 10-5, just 3 rounds left in this first half, as a KJ, who we argue is not as viable utility-wise as a Pichu is, over on that Cypher. And look at the difference between these players. I get it's defense versus offense, but where's the Pichu we saw offensively from Niner Esports that was cooking in the few final moments in these post plants for them?
I mean, it's going to show on the attacking side primarily, though. I mean, being able to throw down a tripwire and just have that peace of mind compared to having a constant player back to 7, these super long hallways and main entries, is just like a 9-day difference. But speaking of a day, we're getting things started off pretty soon here. Already able to go ahead and get a first blood onto the board. Get that Bulldog and hang, create a little bit of space here towards the A side. I talk about these setups for Niners. If they can have the space just given to them to work with, I mean, I think they can usually get these rounds. And even then, they were able to go ahead and pick up a Vandal off the back of that kill that was made towards the back of side. So, or actually, no, they didn't pick it up all the but they at least have the space to play with here. And they've even managed to get themselves some nice 1-for-1 trades off the back of the rest of these kills. So, I mean, a scenario like that, I mentioned it earlier. If you give them the site, give them enough time to also set up that hold, I mean, they're going to have little to zero issues whatsoever. So, I mean, GMU's just got to be a bit quicker to the cut, or just better yet, make sure to expect the A site hit a little bit sooner.
I mean, you can hear the squishy footsteps, right, of your opposition's neon squeaking out from hallway from within the dark cover. And from there, it's just a matter of securing the frag and starting to pre-fire through it, just using those audio cues to your advantage, letting your headphones do half the work for you, of realizing when you should be firing, how you should be holding, and trying to equalize out those odds. Ult Orb is collected in through A-Long. The Patriots really want to try to get some ults into their back pocket as soon as they possibly can, maybe save some eco as they head in the final few rounds, and just give you the chance for maybe Ruda to do so. Here it is, popped in hand. Sorry, Soji to do so. Popped in hand, comes in, gets 3! There it is, finally netted for him, hunting for more. They get the 4th from Aiden. Here comes the fast lane, and here comes Soji, hoping to find out where the hell Coco is, but I hate to break it to you, or sorry, not Coco, Pichu is. They're off on A. They've taken a full and total wraparound, and this ultimate's not going to last too much longer. Pichu wants to be surprise factor, as your role is for the Sentinel on Haven, and they've been surprised quite a lot. Where the heck is my team gone? It's the Patriots taking a flawless 8th round.
Huge round there for the Patriots. I mean, just going ahead and really just driving in that lead. And even then, I mean, not even worried about the flawless, considering that, I mean, off the back of that round, you already have so much money coming into it. You've already gone ahead and gotten strings of rounds over and over and over again. But it was the Niners that need to go ahead and live out that round because, I mean, look at the economy. They just don't have really too many of the buy. You see Sif able to go ahead and manage only the sheriff at hand. We're not really concerned about that because you have the ultimate to play with over on that side. But, I mean, even then, looking at what they got to work with, it's just not much. They're kind of looking to scratch it all together. But, I mean, still a chance. A couple guns in their hands. Possible lineup here towards that A main area of the map. With that ultimate coming out, there's a possibility of at least a couple kills, but with all the ultimates just being popped so preemptively, you just don't get anything out of it.
At least you guarantee sight. At least you have control of the objective. The Hunter's Fury will buy yourself some time, maybe give you a chance to have a player wrap back around into A main, but very one-dimensional from the Patriots. They'll put Patreon up towards heaven, maybe waiting for the hint of the audio cue, hoping somebody would be in that corner. You try to get the intel off with a recon bolt that was cleared, so you had at least a little bit of something there. Soji's inside and in a very aggressive angle, and I don't know how they knew Sip was exactly there, but it is the Patriots thrashing it defensively, and Aiden has to play this all alone. Paranoia hits both. A fallback plan must be made. Soji's able to get out of dodge faster, but Max Vince is already low on HP because of it, and the shots just can't connect to keep your Omen off the spike, and you can't connect to Soji as they dashed on out through the cover. Patriots 9-3. We saw an 8-4 split for Niner Esports on the first map. The second map, total opposite, and even add one more to the Patriots out.
Yeah, I mean, just good lookings from them and just across the board. Able to go ahead and just really drive this thing home just right off the get-go. I mean, even then only being one round off from that kind of double-digit area of the map, but even then, looking to see what they've managed during that last game, I don't see that being much of a chokehold for them, especially if you can manage to get this first round as a pistol. We've seen their pistol not only find the first, but the second, and sure, it's a little bit more standard. It's not a 5-0 start like we saw, or a bit of a switch up of the 1-1 that we noticed afterwards, but it has been something for them, and they make sure to, no matter what, after winning that first, they win that second. And that's the big thing you need to be looking for. Hitting 11 early, guaranteeing yourself the long haul that Niner Esports going to have to dig themselves up from, and that should give you enough space to at least manage 2 rounds, especially knowing the ultimates that you can really build up over time, looking at the just star power that you got working with.
Looks like the Patriots trying to knock on the gate of B site early. That's a fast ball.
What
How are you allowed
we
to get
doing?
out of there so far with a spike in your hand? Unreal. And Niner Esports are at least able to get it, but the damage has been done. They've recollected that spike, and now they can start rotating off to an opposing side and even find a refrag. Trade for trade. Get into sight and try to get the spike down. But Pichu, despite being flashed, is still able to secure 1 kill, and C's takes one into the afterlife just the same. The Patriots down to a 2-player disparity. But Katrin's got full HP, and Coco is not too far behind it. Maybe Max Vince makes a mistake here as they attempt, or sorry, Aiden makes a mistake here as they attempt to try to jump up and maybe see if anyone's inside garage. The dark cover goes over towards long. You know that they're inside window, but there's just no real availability here to try to snuff out this player or get the information that they're here. Katrin maybe making some noise. They want a better angle to use that rupture, but nothing's gonna happen. Maybe one more chance. Remaining. That's a head cleanly cut off your shoulders. Pichu at range. Maybe C's dies through the Radiant crate.
He's shooting somewhere different.
It's just not gonna happen at this rate if Coco can't pull off an impossibility. They know one was garage. They'll have moved away from there. They know that there's still one off towards Plat. C is trying to tuck into a corner. Not much time remaining. There's the kill. Pichu also quite low. Stuff one out again. 8 seconds left. You'll have to stick through this spike. And Aiden may be a bit too slow to try to deny this. It will be a Patriots post plant now, but Coco has no availability to get out. But the turret doesn't get the information they want either, thanks to the dark cover popped by Aiden, and Coco sees it. That should tell you that he stepped into sight. Where is the realization of that utility usage? Aiden pulls it out from garage window in through defender's spawn, and the Patriots couldn't pull off a 10th round.
There was so much that could have gone wrong in so many different areas there for GMU at so many different instances that I can't even fathom. I mean, when you look at what was going on there, or better yet for Niners because of the side swap, it's the fact that Aiden could have swung out from garage at any point in time to go ahead and pop off Coco earlier. It's the fact that even then, after the round, I would have probably left this call if I saw that after the round had been won, or better yet, the kill had been made. You walk over to Coco's body to pick up that gun behind Radiant Knight. If that smoke dropped and that turret didn't see it, which, I mean, KJ's dead, but even then, I mean, just the timing of how everything could have happened. It could have been too much, too bad, too wrong at just too many instances. But it's good for Niners to get themselves back on the board, start this thing off pretty solid, because we've seen that either their second rounds either go extremely well and carry on throughout the entirety of the game, or they just go ahead and get shut down almost instantaneously. So 3v3 on site, things already carrying out. After a bit of a scuffle, they at least managed to get themselves one more.
I think it's a positive round still for the Patriots. They drop out 2 weapons from their hands, and while Niner Esports weren't bringing like full 5, they still had enough that it's going to cost them a possible rifle going into round 3 if they choose to force. And at the very least, I mean, it's only Sheriffs they're having to face off against. But Niner Esports are pulling off some pretty crazy rounds in the first half on Sunset with only Sheriffs, and we said, hey, gunfights are a problem for GMU. It felt like early before they started to truly lock in and feel like themselves again. And a lot of that came off of Niner Esports being very effective with those Sheriffs and being very effective in rounds where even early, where eco wasn't necessarily a problem for either side and it was just kind of even footing, you're getting those earlier frags, getting those first bloods and starting to tally in your favor and using that to triculate into sight and shut down what was going into these objectives. But the Patriots, they weren't expecting much going into round 14. And round 15, though, they want to play as slow as humanly possible, try to take these advantageous gunfights with the rifles in their hands, hope somebody on Niner overextends, and that's why we see all 5 holding out in towards Hay and top of mid. Looking out from window, Soji wants to go fast, maybe hoping for some players to just send some shots out through that dark cover and window, and now they've got intel there's a player on Plat. How many do they know were in window? Is it just one? Or do they realize 2 shots were coming through? They may want to take the rotate and take the gamble that B or A could be the better site.
Yeah, we're really not quite sure though. I mean, considering what we've had to look for GMU in terms of the attacking side, we just haven't seen anything yet. We don't know what their kind of holds look like in terms of the retakes. I mean, we haven't really gotten a good grasp of what they're dealing with, knowing that, well, we haven't seen a full kit really be brought out by them yet. But better yet, same thing for the Niners.
Bait.
We haven't really had themselves too much of a chance to kind of showcase their defensive half. But keep in mind, their last defense was really darn good when it came around to Sunset. So maybe somewhat of a similar result, but I mean, looking at these rotations, looking at what's happening here, the one thing that Niner is prone to doing is at least rotating, and probably a little bit too aggressively, quite frankly. Looking at what's happening here so far, already juked out a couple times. Taking here, and even then Coco with a nice free wrap around.
Let K-Tran use utility in A main. Let Ruda put up the fast lane to A and even throw out a single smoke to heaven. That's 3 pieces of utility that's saying scream to Niner Esports, hey, we want the A site. But half your team is already pivoting off to C, and the moment they see the utility sent back of a smoke in default plant position, you know there's a player actively on back of site. You don't want to go into it. Take that rotate, get that C site, and start to take damage in. And leave Coco on that wraparound into the B main. Just domination from the Patriots, realizing their game plan, actualizing it near perfectly, and saying, we can read 2 steps ahead of you. You have to read 3 in front of us, and that's just not something we're expecting you to do. 10 now, double digits for the Patriots. Niner, you're 3 bad rounds away from saying goodbye to your season in the SEL, and thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just too close here for the likes of Niners just to kiss their season goodbye. I mean, considering what they've accomplished so far, even then looking at that last map and see what they managed there, I mean, it was just so close to, I mean,
go.
At start, had such high hopes for. I mean, expecting once again, talking about this team, what they managed to do on a season-to-season basis, that it's hard to see that they can have it closed out fairly quickly right here, right now, as they're looking at least just maybe manage themselves a first blood in 2 different areas of the map, back towards Garage, A main, but both places, they just let players squeak away. Bit of information gained on both sides, bit of utility shut down for the attacking, and better yet, the only thing you get is a bit of information on the defense while you've barely really found yourself any space because you haven't really moved at all.
Sif's waiting for any intel towards top of bottom drop for A. Nothing in sewer, though. The Aldron will still come forward. Maybe a better use this one up over the wall, trying to see if anyone's inside along. AB Blaze has been spotted. Would be perfect. It doesn't matter. The rest of the team will still rotate into this A site. Dark cover up to heaven. Rupture in towards short. And another one out towards Hall. This screams Niner that the players are stepping into side as fast as humanly possible. It's not going to keep Soji out from the flank of hell. And sending 2 people thereafter. The Patriots with 4 still standing. Pichu may be on the flank, which is expected for a Sentinel, but Blaze just wasn't ready for it. Max Vince forced to make up for their shortcoming, and C's is stuck in a desperate 1v3. 11th round knocking on the door for the Patriots. Max Vince's head narrowly being missed upon by C's, but a great guiding light has been still denied. K-Tran taking down their doppelganger, and 11 for the Patriots.
Get ready.
Yeah, just looking to go ahead and just close up shop here. I mean, quite frankly, you get to the point where you're sitting in this 6-round deficit. I mean, even then looking at GMU and seeing how close it is. I mean, sure, you got 1 more round till match point, but even then after that, it's 1 more until, well, just everything's gone ahead and done with. So, I mean, Niners have themselves not only just a long road just to get this map back into a playable state, but better yet, you got to look at the next map afterwards. You got to play this game all over again. You got to get yourself into a point where not only you had to get a lead, but manage one as well. And looking at GMU and their shots and how they're playing this, it just looks like they got the Niners number for this half. Because, I mean, looking at Nico right here, right now, you can go ahead and probably be pretty darn confident that number as well that's underway.
All that plan needs to be made now for the Patriots. After getting that first blood, they don't need to grow overzealous and strike too quickly. C's need something. They know they do. They have only a sheriff in their hand. What's the worst case that can happen if you get a kill with nothing afterwards? And Blaze, oh my goodness! Juke and Jive somehow comes out of nowhere. Will not face the consequences until Civ swings in quickly afterwards. But Soji's on the follow-up. 3 versus 1. The A site's a guarantee. And while Pichu has maybe a chance to step down quietly, they didn't get the edge bug you have in CS. Gonna take the damage you get. And K-Tran will conclude and now put the Patriots of George Mason University at now match in series point to send Niner Esports out of the SEL.
Yeah, 4 ultimates available as well. Full eco across the board. I mean, there's just so much here that Niners, it's at this stage where you're going to have to live through hell just to manage to get yourself one more round. Because, I mean, I could not blame them if GMU don't manage to get themselves a singular kill pushing on the side. They're going to invest as much as humanly possible when it comes around to that retake and just set up back towards team main. I mean, the Rolling Thunder, Hunter's Fury, KJ Lockdown, they're inside that cubby just to bide the time because, I mean, the Aftershock won't do enough damage to shut that thing down alone. You're going to have to use a Hunter's Fury just to counteract that on the defense, and that's not even for a round that you're trying to set precedent here. It's a good start. That's Soji. That's a player without an ultimate, though. That's a player that just earned the ultimate off the death, but even then, the Rolling Thunder comes out, C steps right into it, and is almost about to win that fight there. A nice little exchange to come out, but it's still a 2v2, 2v1 now. Niners, I hate to say it, but it comes down to Ruda whether your season sinks or swims.
Ruda, the weight of their team, the weight of the roster on their shoulders, and they'll get their one, but the ult comes out, and Max Vince prioritizes the frag. Unreal today from the Patriots. 13-10 on map 1, from an 8-4 comeback split to turning it into map 2 13-5. They're the #1 seed, and they're the #1 team moving on into playoffs. And unfortunately, there's no lower bracket. This isn't the SCL RL. We gotta wave a hearty goodbye now to the unfortunate team in Niner Esports, who came so far and can only get so far at the end of the day.
Yeah, a difficult ending there for like the Niners. I mean, consider what this entire night started off with. You just see such a huge burning bright light coming off of them, knowing that they are just absolutely looking just as good as anybody else. Able to go ahead, looking more like a #2 seed of just kind of pure level of competition they're bringing to GMU's doorstep. But I mean, everything past that point, that first half, they locked in, they got the job done. It was from that point, just back to back to back. It was not only an entire just half afterwards, but it was an entire next map as well, where they were able to just stay consistent on both ends of the field.
Yeah, and we're coming into a play day, right, of round 2 of playoffs, where you have 5 of the top seeded teams stepping in to this playoff round, and only 4 can conceivably move on. And Niner Esports was the 9th seed. They weren't even one of those top 5,
Yeah.
and they had upset FGC. It wasn't a major upset. They were only the 8th seed in comparative to the 9, but they still put off a pretty damn good first map and a good showcase overall against that #1 team, and maybe showed that GMU has a weakness over on that Sunset map that can start to be poked against by some of these other teams like UGA Black, who are now facing off right now against Auburn. We know how that game's gone before. They took down Auburn 2-0 previously, so maybe something big can happen there. And now Converse, who's guaranteed to move on into round 3, having just taken down Oklahoma in a 2-0 affair as that #3 seed. And then, of course, we don't know the Knights Rising game of UCF against the Clemson A roster, I believe, as that's going to be played over on Sunday. But we do not know anything in playoffs, but we do know one thing, and it's that George Mason University are that #1 seed for a reason, and they're looking very, very good. And I don't think they're going to stop as long as they continue to play at the right time, at the right pacing. I don't think nothing's going to change for them, Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing to me though is still like just seeing how clean teams are and seeing them in their prime. It always hurts to kind of see these later stages and kind of see still some glaring, just absolute hemorrhages of some of these squads. I mean, because they're still very much prevalent. I mean, if anybody actually watches these games, this film, and afterwards, and just kind of takes notes of what's going on here, it gets to that point where you're trying to figure out, like, what are we really going to do as a squad? And even then, Oklahoma was a very big example of that. Looking back over the couple of weeks, I mean, we looked at Oklahoma a couple times, and every single time I always felt like last week I even kind of called that one. I said that like I wanted to lean in towards it, still open ended, and really just discuss and say, okay, Oklahoma has a chance, but seeing them struggle 2 weeks back to back, it was at that point where I'm just like, man, I just don't see them consistent enough to really clearing this thing out. And GMU looks pretty darn close. Like, while they had an outstanding Haven, that could just be a map to them. Realistically, that doesn't have to be just kind of a game plan. That doesn't have to be an entire just synchronization of a squad. That could be just a map. Everything else could be just a glaring discrepancy in what we've seen in their record over the course of the season. So knowing that it's there, knowing that it's small, at least for them in terms of their mental, here when you, as an analyst, and even then, I mean, any other coach or any other IGL who's watching that, it's going to be so much more obvious for them that GMU, they're going to have a rough trip next week as well. I mean, if they make it to Grands, that's a whole different story. But I mean, obviously, right here, right now, and to even get to that point in general, next week is going to be just disastrous. Not for them, but just in general, because I feel like a lot of these teams still in collegiate, not the biggest deal in the world. They still have some hiccups to figure out. It's still a fresh season of the school year. So you're not really kind of getting all those buttons pressed, all those gears aren't connected super flush just yet. And I mean, while we still have a second semester go underway, this one I'm hoping to see some bounds in terms of performance for the next couple weeks.
I mean, we knew coming into this that GME was going to be probably the top team. Top three was where we were 100% safe to say they were going to be stepping into the season. And we were
Right.
super excited seeing the level and elevation and competition for SEL in comparison to the previous two seasons we've had, where every season we've had a big jump in competition level, but this one felt like a major leap. And I feel like it's going to be the exact same thing stepping into our new scheme and format and formula in general for the league into our next semester. But before that, we have round three, our semi why am I blanking on the term? Uh, Semis. I guess that is our
It's
semifinal.
just
That's the word I'm looking for.
yes.
Semifinal. My goodness, as a caster, sometimes words just don't come to me. And then our finals afterwards, you're guaranteed GMU to face off against either UCF Knights Rising or Clemson, which means I think they are pretty good standing to be able to face off against Clemson. I would maybe argue Clemson has been in on a bit of an upturn recently, Dallas, towards the later
Yes,
half of the
I
season.
think their steps have been smaller, but their genuine ground level of performance has been higher right from the get go, where we just have a higher expectation for them,
Yeah.
which can hurt them in the long run. But I do genuinely feel like Clemson, they've shown their weaknesses, but it feels human. It feels like it just kind of happens. It doesn't look like it's a systematic, like, okay, this falls through, this falls through, this falls through. Clemson, just in general, it feels like they know each other as a team. I feel like they've been together. At least the core of that unit is still been there for a while from what we saw from last year. So they're not having to really kind of figure out those hiccups just yet. So systematically, they look great individually. They still kind of struggle a little bit, but I mean, that's just something that a couple ranked games can end up fixing.
Yeah, and UCF Knights Rising are good, but with a team that's on that kind of lead, that's on that kind of elevation as a roster as a whole and progressing so successfully, I think that is a likely game to go maybe all three and have Clemson strip it away in the final few moments, only being one seated lower, but still
Right.
very high precedent for them. Converse is already guaranteed to go to the semi, and I truly believe if Auburn is able to pull off this game against UGA Black, which they unfortunately don't have the history of being able to do, as we saw on a side stream about 3 weeks
Yeah.
ago, I think if Auburn pulls that off, Converse is guaranteed to the finals because Auburn may pull out something crazy in round two, but I don't think they're doing it in the semis against Converse.
Yeah.
Georgia is the only team I think that it would
Yep.
be able to shut down that Converse Valorant Rebel
Right.
because the few losses we've seen from Converse have truly been outlandish. And I
Yeah.
think they're the only team I'm looking at that can then give GMU truly a testament to how good they can show and maybe even take them down in only 4 maps, let alone the 5 that would come through in a best of 5 in potential.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the season, there's still a lot really kind of up in the air. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to see what we see out of this entire game that we do see out of the Georgia Auburn kind of thing. I'm wishing we could honestly say that tonight, but we only have so many times we can
I
really
tried
see
to check if
Auburn.
they had a side stream up, but Auburn doesn't have a side stream up. So unfortunately,
No, it's
they were doing
unfortunate to say the
Overwatch. They
least.
weren't doing. They weren't showing Valorant
What?
apparently. Yeah, they have
Okay,
a an
that's
Overwatch game.
something.
That's it.
It's just I don't know, man. Let's see. Yeah, you're right. It is still in progress. I'm with you on that. I think UGA is the only one that can really take down Converse in terms of that because I mean Auburn, we saw them later on in the actual stages of like the Swiss stage, and I mean while they look good and while they look all right and they can manage things, keep in mind
They
like
almost
they
lost to
were still
Oklahoma.
yeah they came through inside the LCQ, and I mean that's to be expected. An LCQ squad, they weren't really high ranked off the get go, but even then, it was a narrow win by Oklahoma, who just got shut down as well. So it's at that point to where it's like if you can barely squeak one out against Oklahoma, who still managed to find themselves in a spot, it's just there's no way. There's no way. I mean, I would love to be optimistic. I would love to kind of paint this entire portrayal and, for the sake of the broadcast and kind of, keep things close. But I mean, looking at the stats, seeing the history of what's going on here, I mean, Oklahoma and Auburn, we did that matchup. We cast that matchup. And still, even then, I'm just like, there's no shot,
Yeah.
realistically.
Especially if Converse just wiped away. I'm gonna check the score actually real fast of what each game was. Just took out Oklahoma 2-0. And considering that they beat them 2-0, started at the same time, and they were done right at the start of map two for us in this series. Yeah, 13-3, 13-6. Oklahoma
Right.
just probably had the same problems we've seen them for a while, where it felt like maybe one player is a little bit lacking when they needed everyone to fire on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Converse not a team that can stride through.
Yeah,
Oklahoma's
that was an
gotten
OT matchup over an LCQ between Auburn and Oklahoma. I mean, that's how close it was. It wasn't only just in 2-1, it was OT whenever they actually started getting the ball rolling. So, I mean, if you barely beat Oklahoma in that regard, and even then, I talked about Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I want to say, looks like a tier 2 version of GMU this season. Like they
Yeah.
looked good, they looked great. They have such glaring, beautiful moments, but when they have weaknesses, they're pretty big splotches. They're pretty big bruises. And GMU, obviously, they're much smaller bruises, but when you look at entire, top 4 teams, to where their entire physique and everything's supposed to be just squeaky clean, those blemishes are much more adamant than you would see out of any other team who looks like they've been around the block a little bit.
Yeah, and we do have confirmation apparently from Gray, who was our observer today. Big shout out to Gray for subbing it for Bobby today. UJ is up 1-0 against Auburn. It's not been updated in League OS just yet, but they won 13-4 on Haven, which I actually don't think is that odd of a scoreline considering what we saw from it previously. I think it's about what we saw from them because I think we did see it. I think it was Haven and behind previously in that game on that side stream. So it's not too odd of a score for that. So expected though with UGA in the lead, if they hold on to that and continue to do what is expected of them. Shout out Auburn, even if they lose here, they've played great. Oklahoma, everyone knows me and Dallas absolutely have a soft spot for Oklahoma in our hearts because of how they performed and what they did at the SEL LAN. Shout out to everybody that's gone this far into the SEL and unfortunately has to bow out after these losses. But Georgia goes through. Georgia can absolutely. They were seated higher than Converse, so they have precedence. I think they can absolutely take down Converse. The issue is Converse has been the most consistent, I think, on general for every player on the team out of any team in the SEL.
Of course, yeah. That's our matchup next week, without a doubt. I mean, if we get around to it, I mean, expect that matchup next week. We just saw GMU Niners come to a conclusion. Clemson, I mean, that's going to be a great matchup nonetheless next week. But still, I think, honestly, we haven't seen UGA, I believe, on broadcasts except for maybe only once this season.
I think it was only the side stream, too. I don't know if we had them on the
it wasn't even a legit stream.
No, I think we had them like week 2. I think we had them like week 2 on broadcast. It was like really early.
It wasn't like a glaring kind of matchup either. It was one of those where we had to see one of our top seeds early. That was kind of the reason we voted on that matchup. So, I mean, seeing really how that's going to go, and even then looking at it now in terms of playoff, it is in the process of verifying a 2-0 here for UGA Black. So, that's probably, you can go ahead and expect to see that next week.
Is it? Oh yeah, it just changed. 13-4,
literally
13-6
like seconds
sunset.
ago.
Yeah. Okay. So Georgia will in fact move on, and Auburn has to bow out of the SEL. So that means this week we've knocked out Oklahoma. Thank you very much for joining the SEL. Knocks out Auburn, who has been honestly very impressive this season. We had a lot of problems with Auburn individually on a basis. Poison didn't feel super comfortable. It felt like on their duelist role. They came alive, and throughout the LCQ when it feels like stepping into playoffs as well, they've been playing exceptional. I mean, they shut down Florida pretty darn well, right? Like Florida, I think, is a very good team. Clemson and USCF Knights Rising won't know till Sunday. And then, of course, Niner Esports, who almost took a map off the Patriots tonight. And then the Patriots, who are moving on and doing super well. So shout out to every one of those teams. We're going to go ahead and sign out of this broadcast. My name is Infernosis. I've been joined here by Mick. We've been yapping here long enough. Thank you as well to Shocker, our new head of production for the SEL. That was one of our announcements. Make sure you check out that VOD to see the big one that you players in Valorant and Rocket League for the #1 team are going to really want to pay attention to. And now, please check it out. Don't know why we can't announce it on socials, but watch the VOD. It was in there pretty clearly. No matter what the case is, thank you all for joining the SEL this season. We still got more action to go through. Tune in next week for some conclusions in Rocket League and our semis. We're expecting to be the matchup between Converse and now Georgia coming up on stream. We'll see you guys next week.